Hey everybody, Mark Hanna, Wisdom Gaming. Today's video is about preparing for game turn one of the Fallen Eagles replay. As you recall, I'm going to go ahead and do some type of after-action report playing this game, and I don't want to show every single move I make. I might do some sample attacks, critical attacks, just to show how that's done, but I'd rather do sort of recaps of each turn or maybe each player turn. Problem is there really isn't player turns in this. It's a command control oriented game, so you basically exchange initiative more or less between the French and the coalition. This will become more clear. Those of you familiar with this game will know what I'm talking about. Right, so here's the map, and I wanted to show you, I guess we could zoom in a little bit here. You can see the French, you will see them. I'm going to do a little drawing here. French will be set up over in this direction. The Anglo-Allied more or less like this. Um, I'll show you that in a bit, but essentially the main objectives are going to be uh, Chateau de Hougoumont. Let me see here. A smiley face if they capture it. There's La Haye Saint. And then Papillote is another possibility as the French are trying to drive to these initial objectives. If they can get beyond them, of course, they really need to do that. So that's the main thrust of the game initially, are these 3 points. Basically historical basis. Okay, so as I move forward then to cursor here. All right, so turn track. We start off with the 11 a.m. turn with mud. Uh, as you can see, this is just for informational purposes. These are the end of the turn rolls. At the end of each activation, you roll. If you roll greater than this number, the first time you flip it over to the turn ending. Roll it a second time, it ends the turn. So you can see at the beginning, it's 9-9, goes to 10-10. So you have to really roll pretty high. And then at the end, at 9 o'clock or so, it starts to die out. But by then, it's probably going to be decided. Uh, the French do get a modifier to possibly have the initiative first most of the time. So that's a turn track here. Right now, here's the setup. Okay, you can see very clearly what's going on. Uh, Let me mark again these objectives here, here, and I guess there's one here. Now, these farms, all right, these fortified farms have special characteristics if they only have one allied unit in them, they have better defense. They're sort of like mini fortresses. If the allies put more than, I think, 2 units in there, I don't even think they can put an artillery in there. Uh, I'll check that out. But basically, they then become more like just regular villages. And there's some villages over here. You'll see, whoops, clear that off. You'll see some villages. Here's one. Here's one. Place note. You actually see that I've circled this on the map. If any Anglo-Allied units get into this area, okay, then this allows the reserves, which are down here, to activate. No French units can pass through this line that I've drawn over here. So at the beginning until 4 o'clock, they can't go past that. So no wide flanking moves. But if the Anglo-Allies get within 4 hexes of this road below this farm, or any hex of Place Noire, I should say, uh, then this will activate the guard. Guard cavalry can't start off doing anything, but the other cavalry will be active. All right. So you'll see then that the initial turn, you have to set up the orders for every single one of these formations. So that's what I'm going to show you here in a second. Here, though, it's useful to take a look at this unit types. This is a very nice chart. It shows you basically the strength factor of infantry, its morale, and this number here is its movement points. The light infantry can move a little farther. You see that little L right here? This means they get a fire modifier when they're firing. More accurate rifles, I guess. Interestingly, any of the Anglo-Allied infantry is automatically treated as light for firing, but they're not so good as the French in melee. The French have a slight advantage in melee. Or I should say that the Anglo-Allied units have a disadvantage in melee. The Prussians are normal in melee, along with the French. Here is the difference between light and heavy cavalry, and you can see the heavy cavalry is the armored cuirassiers. I'm not sure how to pronounce that exactly. Then these are dragoons here. Much faster but lower morale. That's the only distinction I can see in the game. There's really no uh, other distinction. Heavy cavalry um, is a little slower, but doesn't take as many movement points to gear up for a charge, but this one can go farther. So artillery versus horse artillery is shown here. One key difference between artillery and horse artillery is that artillery can't move adjacent. You can't move it into a zone of control. Of course, it can remain in a zone of control and leave a zone of control, but you can't park the guns right up close as you can with horse artillery, which, as long as there's a friendly unit in the hex, you can move horse artillery in next to the enemy. Okay, so here's all the different nationalities. Quite interesting here. French Guard has got the yellow stripes. British, and then you have many German legions here, Dutch and Belgians. There's quite more international on the Anglo-Allied side than I realized before I started playing this particular game. Um, okay, now everybody might know that in this game, Fallen Eagles 2, there are some tactical cards. And the way you're supposed to do it is you just deal out half of the cards to each player. Player gets the cards. They can pick and use a card. If they use a tactical card, then it goes into the other person's hand for availability there for the next turn. I didn't want to be fussing with cards all the time, so I got out the CDG solo system over from GMT, and more specifically developed by Stuka Joe. And you can see then that what I've done is I'm going to start using this to randomly determine each turn which cards are available. On the first turn, I decided arbitrarily that only one card would be available. This is the no surrender card for the British, and this is a surprise by the cavalry card, so this is going to affect my orders for the French. As since they can get some cavalry supplies, I might launch an early attack or with the cavalry. Probably be a disaster, but since I don't really know what I'm doing exactly. Here we go. Okay, so here's the orders then. All of the orders for the different corps are shown. The Imperial Guard is frozen until basically turn 4, unless those conditions arise that I mentioned before. I've kept in reserve these two corps, the 4th Cavalry and the 6th Corps. The first corps, so what you do is you put where you want them to go. These are marching orders. You might have seen on the map that in reality the 2nd Corps is more or less around here, and I think the 1st Corps is more or less in this area here, something like that. And then I've got a cavalry group back over here. That's the 3rd Cavalry. So all of these guys are going to be marching forward um, this way, and this way. The main idea, of course, is while they're heading towards these objectives, they'll be able to take those key objectives. Hougoumont. Oh, that's the wrong one. Smiley face. All right, Hougoumont and the Hay Saint. All right, will be the main axis of attack. So that's what the French are doing. Now, if we move over to what the British will be doing, we can see that they only have one order. You've got the third NL. They're basically stationed in this city here, this town. And I decided that, well, it's very possible that these guys will be attacking. So this is sort of a counter thrust to bolster my flank for the Hougoumont area. See, there's actually that's Hougoumont and La Haye Sainte. So the rest of the other guys, as you can see, some of them have no orders. They're just in reserve. Many of them have defense orders. Now, the thing about defense orders in this game is that they do provide you protection against cavalry. Their units are basically set up to defend very well. They are penalized, though, that artillery gets an extra bonus when firing at them. So that's one thing that Napoleon will probably try to do is organize his artillery to try to pummel some of these guys before he sends his troops in with bayonets. Uh, the original Battle of Waterloo is quite bloody. One of the bloodiest battles of the war, actually, might have been the bloodiest, except for Borodino. And it was done over a compact front, only 2.5 miles, compared to some of the wider fronts of more of the other major battles. So it was really, as I said before, more of a knife fight, and it's going to be. There'll be a lot of firing, defensive firing, melee attacks, and routed units will be running away. Commanders will be trying to rally them as they run away, uh, and filling in the gaps, counter-charging cavalry with other cavalry in an opportunistic way. These orders can be changed. There's actually a random effect on how many orders can be changed per turn. Uh, the French roll a six-sided die, and on a one or a two, they can change one order. On a two or a three that turn, they can change two, and for a five or six, they can change three. Now, the Anglo-Allies, they roll a single die, and depending on the die roll of results, that's how many corps or formations they're allowed to change orders for. So hopefully, unless Wellington's sort of sleepy, he won't be rolling ones all the time, uh, and we'll be able to counter, as he probably will have more orders than the French, but he's got more corps to deal with. So it's an interesting situation. So there's the orders chart for both of those. Hopefully that explains that well. So again, now that you've seen the orders, let's take a look at the situation here. We've got, I think we zoom in a bit here. Yeah, this is the second corps. First corps is here, and this cavalry corps. So this cavalry corps back here basically has orders. Get my pen right. There we are. Has orders to basically go in between and charge these guys. These are somewhat lightweight units. They don't have very high morale. And with that cavalry surprise card, maybe some kind of breakthrough can occur. Now, there is mud the first turn, so everything loses one movement point, which isn't actually that severe, if you ask me. But keep in mind, each formation can activate twice per turn. They have to be able to get. Let's take a look at Kellerman. You see him here. Kellerman is the leader for the French cavalry, Third Corps. He's got an activation number of 9, so if he rolls 9 or less, he'll be able to do something. The French Second Corps' leader has an activation number of 8, as does the First Corps, which isn't bad. All right. So the thing is, if you roll higher than this, then you can't activate them when you want. You'll have to try to activate someone else, and maybe you didn't want to activate them. So the design for this game is really command control oriented, which is something I really like. I think it was really brilliant for them to come up with these order cards here like this to regulate the movement and defense of the units without having to write down written orders. I have to tell you, I can't abide by games that do that only because, unless you're playing solitaire, and the gamers, if you're familiar with the gamers, they have a lot of games where you have to write down orders and maps and sort of things, which is probably more realistic from a command standpoint, but it's highly interpretive from the standpoint of who's giving the orders and how flexible they try to make them after the fact when they meet the enemy. Uh, and in our groups, we could never really get everybody to agree that, the orders should be rather strictly interpreted. Here, they're very simple. You put, here we go, look at this one. So you pick a core, you pick a location on the map with a dot, and you say that's where I'm moving. It has to be within 15 hexes of your leader here. So as long as there's a 15 hex distance between these two, you can pick that location. And generally speaking, every turn you need to move towards that area. Uh, if you defend an area, that's another defense area, you can't really move very far at all. You're only allowed to move one hex. But you do get a lot of defensive benefits. And no orders allows you more flexibility to do defense or attack. But then if you have no orders, each individual battalion has to roll for initiative in order to move more than one hex. So there you're basically relying upon the initiative of your individual battalions, and you're not coordinating them as a complete massive formation. So when you get into that situation, you're probably going to give them an order so that you can control them a bit better. Okay, so that's my commentary on that. It looks like it's going to be very exciting here to get this started. So I think we're ready to go. So I'm looking forward to starting this. I was hoping to get it done today, but I had a lot of work-related functions I had to do over the weekend that were unanticipated, and you know how that goes. So I'll probably get this started uh, here, certainly by this week, though. I want to get this going. So, all right, thanks a lot for listening. Welcome to the channel. If you've never been here before, thanks for staying this far and listening. If you didn't like it, don't give me a thumb. If you liked it, click on the like button and subscribe. Look forward to seeing you guys. Bye.